Good evening, and welcome back. I'm the Yawning Historian, and tonight there is nothing you need to solve, nothing you need to remember, and nowhere you need to be. Let your shoulders loosen. Let the room around you become quiet. If you are already comfortable, you may close your eyes now, and if sleep arrives before the story is finished, that is exactly the right ending. Tonight we are going to spend a long, slow winter in the medieval world. We will not hurry through a battle or follow a king on a campaign. We will stay close to ordinary people, to the houses, paths, kitchens, barns, and small rooms where winter was measured in armfuls of wood, handfuls of oats, and the steady patience of waiting for light. The Middle Ages were not one single place or one single weather pattern. A fishing village on the coast, a stone town in northern France, and a monastery in the hills of England all knew different winters. Accounts suggest that the most difficult part was not one spectacular storm. It was the way cold entered every ordinary task and stayed there. Our first evening begins in a small farming village somewhere in northern Europe. In a century when the roads were tracks, the windows were narrow, and most of the light after sunset came from fire, rush, or moon. The exact year does not matter. A medieval winter was never a date on a calendar alone. It was a condition of the whole landscape, a long season in which the fields rested, the animals breathed white clouds into the dark, and every household listened to the weather through the walls. The village lies in a shallow valley. There is a church on a low rise, a mill beside a stream, and perhaps 40 houses scattered along a muddy lane. The houses are built from whatever the local ground provides. Some have timber frames woven with hazel and covered in clay. Some are made of rough stone. In wetter places, the walls may be thickly daubed and the roofs heavy with thatch. None of them are perfectly sealed. Wind finds the places where the wall meets the roof. Smoke finds the rafters. Rain remembers the smallest weakness in the thatch. Before dawn, each house has its own darkness. A family sleeps close to the hearth because the fire is the warmest object they possess. The coals have been covered with ash, and when the first person wakes, they do not simply strike a match and make a flame. They uncover the embers, breathe on them, place dry grass or shavings above them, and feed the tiny red heart with twigs. A fire is a continuation, not a beginning. Losing it means spending precious time and fuel making another one. The first person awake is often someone whose work cannot wait for the sun. A woman rises to check the pot that has stood near the coals all night. It may contain beans, onions, oats, cabbage, or yesterday's broth thickened with bread. A child wakes under a shared blanket and listens to the roof. A man goes outside to see whether the water barrel has frozen at its rim, whether the animals are quiet, and whether snow has pressed down a section of the shed roof. In the gray before morning, every sound seems close. The cough of a neighbor, a raven on the churchyard wall, ice cracking in the trough. The food of winter is mostly food that could be kept. Medieval households planned the cold months long before the first frost. Grain was stored in bins or sacks, peas and beans dried, apples placed in lofts, and roots kept in pits or cellars. Meat could be salted or smoked. Fish, where it was available, might be dried until it was hard as wood. These methods preserve calories, but they also changed the shape of every meal. Fresh greens became rare. The same pot might be renewed again and again, with a little more grain, a little water, and whatever could be spared from the stores. For a household with enough land and a good harvest, winter was a season of careful abundance. For a household with a poor harvest, it was a season of arithmetic. A family counted loaves. They counted chickens. They counted the number of weeks until the first green shoots. In manorial records, rents and dues were often reckoned in grain, eggs, animals, or labor. The written accounts rarely describe the private feeling of looking into a nearly empty bin, but the structure of the system makes the pressure clear. A bad autumn did not disappear when the snow arrived. It became part of every morning. When the sun finally rises, it does not bring much warmth. It moves low across the southern sky, and in the shadow of the houses the frost remains. The village lane is a long ribbon of frozen mud, rutted by carts and hoofprints. In a milder winter the road is only wet and difficult. In a hard freeze it becomes a rough surface of ridges, and every cart wheel strikes the ground with a wooden knock. If snow comes, the familiar road vanishes beneath it. People travel by memory, fence line, tree, and church tower. At the edge of the village, a farmer checks a field that looks empty and still. Winter does not mean that all work has stopped. There are tools to mend, hedges to repair, ditches to clear, and firewood to gather. A plowshare can be sharpened beside the hearth. A broken harness can be stitched with leather. A cart axle can be turned slowly in a shed while someone warms their fingers over a clay brazier. The work is quieter than the work of harvest, but quiet does not mean easy. The forest is not simply a place of trees. It is a storehouse, a boundary, and a source of rules. Wood belongs to someone or is governed by custom. Villagers may have rights to gather fallen branches, cut particular kinds of brush, or pasture animals in certain seasons. The phrase common land can sound gentle to modern ears, but the commons are carefully watched. A household that takes too much wood in January may leave itself no permission or no fuel for February. The winter forest is a place of bare branches, animal tracks, and the constant knowledge that every armful has a future use. Wood is warmth, but it is also cooking, light, craft, and survival. A branch burned today cannot cook tomorrow's porridge. A log used in the hearth might otherwise repair a gate or support a roof. Households therefore burn whatever the landscape makes available. Coppiced poles, brush, peat in regions where peat is common, straw, dried dung, and broken furniture when the winter is especially severe. Accounts suggest that fuel was one of the most important hidden costs of cold weather, because a person could not simply decide to be less cold without also deciding to eat food uncooked, work in darkness, or sleep in clothing. At midday, the village becomes briefly busy. Smoke rises from every roof. The mill wheel may turn slowly if the stream has not iced over. Someone carries a basket to a neighbor. A messenger passes along the lane with a hood pulled close around the face. At the church, a bell marks an hour. Although in winter the bell seems to belong to the dark as much as to the day. The sound travels across fields where no one is visible. Inside a cottage, a girl sorts beans on a wooden board. She removes stones and shriveled pieces, saving the sound ones for the pot. Beside her, an older woman twists flax or repairs a garment. Spinning and mending are winter work because they can be done near the fire, and because clothes are not a decorative afterthought. Wool, linen, leather, and fur are the household's moving walls. A tear at the elbow is a hole in the cold. A missing sole is a path for frost. Medieval clothing varied by place, wealth, and period, but the basic principle was familiar. Layers, wrapped close to the body, and repaired for as long as the material allowed. A shirt beneath a tunic, wool over linen, a cloak or hood against wind. People slept in some of these layers, especially when a bed was shared or a room was unheated. The boundary between daytime clothes and nighttime clothes was softer than ours. Clothing was part of the bed, and the bed was part of the household's insulation. The house remains dim even at noon. Small windows may be covered with shutters, cloth, or oiled material rather than clear glass. Light comes from the open doorway when it can, from a rush dipped in fat, and from the hearth. A rushlight burns quickly, and tallow can smell strongly as it melts. Candles of beeswax are cleaner and brighter, but precious. In a poor house, darkness is not an inconvenience that begins after dinner. It is the ordinary background of winter, interrupted by small islands of orange. As afternoon shortens, the village prepares for evening. Animals are brought in close. A cow's breath warms the stall. Chickens settle on their roosts. The stable is often warmer than the house, though it carries its own strong smells, and a child may prefer sleeping near the animals to sleeping against a cold wall. The work of caring for livestock continues because animals are future food, future labor, future milk, and sometimes the only wealth a family can rely upon. In the hall of a larger farmhouse, the fire is built up for the evening meal. A pot hangs from a hook. Someone cuts bread. The room fills with steam and the soft rustle of wool. The family sits near one another not because medieval people were always sentimental about closeness, but because closeness preserves heat. A room is easier to warm when its people share it, and a blanket works better when it covers more than one sleeping body. Outside, the sky darkens before the workday feels complete. This is one of winter's quiet difficulties. The hours of light are short, but the list of necessary tasks remains. There is no electric lamp waiting to extend the day. There are no sealed windows, central pipes, or warm rooms available with the turn of a dial. A person can continue working by rushlight, but fuel is consumed and eyes grow tired. So the village bends toward night earlier than we do. The supper pot is emptied into bowls. The last bread is divided. A prayer may be said, not because every medieval person was equally devout, but because prayer was one of the languages available for uncertainty. The weather cannot be negotiated with. The harvest cannot be rewritten. The fire may fail. A few words spoken in the half-light give the day a shape, and then the household settles into its night arrangements. Some people sleep on raised platforms or straw mattresses. Others sleep on benches, pallets, or the floor. A bed may be a simple wooden frame with a stuffed sack, or it may be a curtained piece of furniture in a wealthy household. The straw must be changed when it becomes damp, flattened, or full of insects. A bed is not simply where a person lies. It is a small climate made of straw, wool, body heat, and the heavy darkness of the room. The youngest children are placed nearest the adults. An older child may sleep beside a sibling. A servant may sleep close to the kitchen, and a hired worker in a loft above the animals. There is little privacy, but there is warmth, and there is the comfort of hearing other people breathe. In winter, the sound of another person's breathing is evidence that the room is inhabited, that the night has not emptied the world. When the last rushlight is pinched out, the hearth becomes the only remaining glow. The household listens to the wind. It brushes the thatch, moves along the walls, and finds the chimney. Snow, if it has begun, softens the outside world. The church bell may sound from the hill, and the dogs may bark once before settling again. Beneath blankets and cloaks, the family slowly becomes still. This is the first winter night we will keep company with. Not a heroic winter, not the winter of a famous king, but an ordinary night in a house that must make its fuel last and its food stretch. The cold is real, but so are the small protections, the banked coals, the thick thatch, the warm animal in the stall, the pot waiting beside the fire, and the human habit of gathering close. Let the village grow quiet now. Let the roofs disappear into the dark, one by one. The frost settles on the lane. The fire sinks under its ash. Somewhere, a child turns beneath a wool blanket and finds the warm place left by another body. Somewhere else, a watchful person adds one small stick to the coals and sees the room brighten for a moment. There is no hurry at all. Winter is long, and we have 6 slow rooms to visit. For now, breathe gently. Let the old village rest beneath its roof. Let the wind move over the fields without asking anything of you, and drift with me toward the woods, where every tree is also a measure of warmth. Before we leave the village, it is worth lingering beside the ordinary house a little longer. The walls are not silent. Timber contracts in the cold and gives a small click. Thatch shifts when the wind crosses it. A mouse moves beneath the floor or inside the wall, searching for grain. The sleeping family hears these sounds without naming them. They belong to the house as much as the door and the hearth do. The house has been arranged through generations of adjustment. The doorway may face away from the strongest wind. The hearth may stand where smoke can find a roof opening. The bed platform may be raised above the dampest part of the floor. A curtain may hang across the entrance to keep a little of the warmth inside. None of these decisions is spectacular, and few are recorded by name. Yet a dwelling is a kind of accumulated memory, a map of what previous winters taught its occupants. In the loft, the stored hay gives off a dry scent. It has been cut in summer, turned beneath the sun, and carried under cover before rain could spoil it. Hay feeds animals, but it also holds heat and gives a person a place to lie. A farmhand sleeping above the stable may be warmer than a family member in a stone room, not because the loft is comfortable in every way, but because the animals below breathe, the hay traps air, and the roof is closer to the body than the open sky. The stable boy knows the winter animals individually. He knows which horse stamps when the wind rises, which cow needs extra bedding, and which hen insists on roosting near the warmer corner. Care is not a single task. It is a series of observations made before the day becomes light. A hungry animal cannot do the work of spring. A sick animal may be the loss of a family's transport, milk, or future wealth. The boy's hand on a horse's neck is therefore both kindness and practical attention. At the other end of the village, the churchyard holds the cold differently. The stones keep the frost. The yew trees remain dark when other branches are bare. People pass through the churchyard on the way to work, and the bell marks the hours. But the place also reminds everyone that winter has always been part of human life. The graves are quiet beneath the snow. The living carry wood and food past them, moving toward another evening. No one in the village expects winter to be defeated. The goal is smaller and more realistic. Keep the fire alive, keep the roof sound, keep the animals fed, keep enough grain for spring, and make it to the first green edge of the next season. This way of thinking changes the meaning of comfort. Comfort is not a room at a constant temperature. It is a moment in which the wind is outside, the pot is warm, and the people you need are close enough to hear. Now the night deepens again. The ash settles. The smoke thins. A person in the nearest house wakes, not from fear, but because the body has reached the edge of one's sleep and is deciding whether to turn. A hand finds the blanket. A foot searches for the warm place. The fire remains, a low red answer to the cold. Let the answer be enough. Let the old village recede into darkness, carrying its roofs, its hedges, and its small protected flames with it. The forest is waiting beyond the last field, and the wood that warms the houses is still standing there beneath the stars. By the second day of our winter, the village has become aware of wood. It is in the sound of the axe, in the pale curls of chips beneath a stump, in the careful way people look at a stack beside a wall. A fire has a visible appetite. It takes a branch, then another, and leaves behind ash that is useful for soap, lye, and the garden that will return months from now. In the meantime, the woodpile grows smaller. The woodpile is one of the quiet calendars of the medieval year. A household with a good supply can read the future in it. Tall logs promise a little ease. Brush and thin branches promise work. A low pile makes every cold morning feel longer. In manorial accounts, charcoal burning, timber rights, coppice cutting, and cartloads of fuel appear as ordinary economic matters. But for a family in a small house, they were also matters of sleep. A warm bed began with a dry branch carried home before the rain. The forest in winter is almost entirely line and shadow. The leaves are gone from the deciduous trees, and the branches make a fine dark net against the sky. Snow shows the movement of animals. A fox has passed along the edge of a ditch. Deer have crossed where the hedge is low. A man with a billhook follows a path to a coppice, while a child gathers twigs behind him. The child is not carrying a storybook bundle of perfectly shaped sticks. The child is carrying what can be carried, and learning the difference between dry wood and wood that only looks dry. Coppicing is an old practice, and its rhythm is slow enough to suit the season. Certain trees are cut back to their stumps, allowing new shoots to grow in later years. The cut branches can provide poles, hurdles, fuel, and kindling. A managed coppice is not an endless forest. It is a promise distributed across time. One section is cut while another rests, and a household may depend on decisions made by people who lived before it. The villagers do not always have free access to every tree. Woods are governed by custom, lordship, and local law. A person might gather deadwood, cut a limited amount, or use a common pasture under particular conditions. The rules vary from place to place, and the surviving records tell us more about disputes than about quiet cooperation. Even so, the existence of the rules shows how important the woodland was. When fuel is a necessity, a boundary becomes warm in one house and cold in another. The man from the village reaches a fallen tree and begins to work. The axe is heavy, its handle polished by use. Each blow makes a flat sound that travels through the bare branches. He pauses to breathe, and his breath clouds the air. The work warms his shoulders, but the fingers around the handle remain cold. In winter, labor can create its own small climate. A person cutting wood may sweat beneath a wool tunic and then chill quickly when the work stops. Beside him, the child gathers kindling into a bundle. Birch bark, when available, catches easily. Dry bracken, shavings, and small twigs are more reliable than a thick log. The bundle is tied with a cord or carried under one arm. The road home is not far, but the load is awkward, and the snow at the edge of the path has covered the stones. The child learns to place each foot carefully, because falling means wet clothing, and wet clothing is a cold that may last until the fire has been fed. Back in the village, the wood is divided by use. A large log is saved for the evening. Smaller branches are kept for morning. A piece of dry timber might be reserved for baking, because an oven needs a strong, steady heat. Another may be saved for the forge, where an edge is repaired or a hinge made. The hearth is not the only place where fuel becomes necessary. A winter economy is built from many small fires. The kitchen fire is the center of the house's weather. It cooks grain and softens dried peas. It boils water. It warms hands, shoes, and damp cloth. It sends smoke up through the roof or into the room first, depending on the design of the house and the direction of the wind. Medieval buildings used different arrangements of hearth and chimney, and the modern image of a neat fireplace is not universal. In some dwellings, the smoke escaped through a roof opening or a louver. In others, a chimney carried it away more efficiently. Either way, the air near the fire could be thick with smoke. Smoke has its own winter smell. It clings to wool and hair. It darkens rafters. It preserves meat and discourages some insects, while also making eyes sting. A family that lives beside a hearth is always partly inside the fire. The smell of smoke can be followed through the village, and a traveler approaching after sunset may know where people are sleeping before he sees the houses. At night, a careful household banks the fire. The word is simple, but the work has a sequence. Larger embers are pushed together. Ash is drawn over them, not so deeply that they suffocate, but deeply enough to slow their hunger for air. A stone or iron tool may be left close by. In the morning, the person who wakes first opens the bank, searches for the red core, and begins again. A small ember is a kind of inheritance, passed from evening to morning. The first flame of the day is often weaker than the last flame of the night. It needs dry material, patient breath, and a hand that knows when to add more. The kindling catches with a whisper, then a small snap. A blue edge appears around the yellow center, and the room begins to change. Frost on a nearby surface does not vanish at once. The fire makes a warm circle, and everything beyond the circle remains winter. In a wealthy household, the problem is not exactly the same, but it is not absent. A manor or castle may have several hearths, ovens, braziers, and kitchens. It may own woodland or buy fuel in quantity. Yet large rooms lose heat quickly, and servants must carry fuel constantly. A great hall can hold a magnificent fire and still have cold corners. The nearer a person sits to the flames, the warmer one side of the body becomes, while the other side remains aware of the stone. Firewood also creates ash, and ash is useful. Mixed with water, wood ash makes an alkaline liquid that can help clean cloth or prepare soap. It can be scattered in yards, used in certain craft processes, or returned to the soil. Medieval households wasted little when necessity gave a second use. The ash pile is therefore not merely the remains of warmth. It is part of the next workday. Peat serves as fuel in regions where the bogs provide it. It must be cut, stacked, and dried, sometimes over an entire season. When burned, peat gives a distinctive smoke and a slow heat. Straw can be burned, though it has many competing uses as bedding, fodder, thatch, and roofing. Dried dung is used in some places where wood is scarce. The fuel of a medieval winter depends on landscape. There is no universal village solution, only a local knowledge of what the ground can spare. The household's fuel decisions are also decisions about time. If the fire is kept strong, cooking is easy, but the woodpile shrinks. If the fire is allowed to sink, more wood survives, but the room cools and the next meal takes longer. A person may sit in darkness rather than spend a candle. A family may gather in one room rather than warm two. The winter is negotiated in small adjustments that rarely make it into chronicles. At midday, the man and child return from the woods. The man drops the bundle beside the wall and stands close to the kitchen fire, letting the damp warmth reach his hands. The child has a red mark across one shoulder from the cord. Someone offers a bowl of broth. The broth is mostly water and grain, with a little onion and the flavor of smoked meat from a bone that has already served several meals. It is hot, and that is part of its value. There are small technologies of warmth everywhere. A heated stone can be wrapped in cloth and placed near a bed. A brick, warmed beside the fire, can be carried carefully to a sleeping place. A clay bottle or metal pan may hold hot water where such vessels are available. People sit on benches rather than directly on cold floors, place woven mats beneath their feet, and hang cloths to slow the movement of air. These measures do not make a house modern. They make an old house slightly less cold. In a monastery, the same knowledge is organized differently. Some monasteries have a warming house, a room with a fire where monks may gather during the coldest part of the day. Others have only limited heating, and the chapter house, dormitory, or kitchen becomes the warmest place. Written rules often describe discipline, prayer, and work, but the physical building reveals another story. Thick walls, small windows, covered walkways, and a careful relationship between fire and routine. In a town, fuel may be bought. Firewood arrives by cart or boat when the roads and rivers allow it. Bakers, brewers, dyers, smiths, and potters all need more fuel than a household can gather. Their trades make the town bright and smoky, and their demands can raise the price of wood. A winter market may be as much about fuel as food. The bundle carried home from a stall is a promise that the kettle will boil and the room will not be entirely dark. The coldest evenings are not dramatic. They are repetitive. The door opens, and a stripe of icy air crosses the floor. Someone closes it quickly. A log breaks and sends sparks toward the hearthstone. A child is told not to step too close. A wet cloak hangs near the fire, but not too near. An old person keeps both hands around a cup. In a corner, a dog has found the warmest patch and refuses to move. The village settles again. The woodpile has changed shape. A little more has been burned, a little more gathered, and the winter has advanced by one night. The fire is banked beneath ash. The coals glow like a small red landscape, hills and valleys of ember. Outside, the forest stands with its branches bare, holding the memory of summer in its roots. When you breathe out tonight, imagine the sound of that fire. Not a roaring blaze, but the quiet work of coals. A stick settling, a soft rush of flame, the slow warmth reaching the hands before it reaches the walls. The people of the medieval winter could not command the weather, but they learned to make a little shelter inside it. Let the axe sounds fade. Let the wood gather itself back into trees. The path is white under moonlight, and the village windows are dark except for the smallest amber openings. Somewhere, a person wakes, finds the embers alive, and adds one twig. The room brightens, then grows still again. There is no need to follow the fire any farther for now. We will let it warm the next story while the night moves over the fields, and while the frozen road waits for the people whose winter work must continue beyond the village gate. The forest also gives the village more than fuel. It gives poles for fences, bark for cordage, leaves for bedding, and places where animals can find what the fields no longer offer. A winter wood is quiet, but it is not empty. People read its edges for signs of what may be gathered without harming next year's growth. The decision to leave a tree standing can be as practical as the decision to cut one down. A household may keep a separate pile of the driest pieces for starting the morning fire. The pieces are small enough to catch quickly and precious enough to be protected from a careless child or a sudden wet day. Bigger logs are split so that their inner wood dries. Brush is tied under an overhang. Peat is brought in from the stack only when the weather has made wood difficult to find. Every shelter around the fuel is another small structure against the season. There are also tools for carrying warmth. A covered ember pan can hold a coal from one hearth to another. A person traveling between buildings may carry a lantern with a small flame protected by horn or thin material. A brazier can be moved, though the weight and smoke make it less convenient than a fixed hearth. The tools are simple, but each is an answer to the same problem. Fire is useful only when it remains alive and close enough to serve. In a village with a communal oven, households may schedule their baking. One family heats the oven, another brings dough, and the heat is shared through a sequence of loaves. The oven is a social machine, even when it belongs to a lord or a town. It concentrates fuel, labor, and time. A person waiting for bread beside it may exchange news, mend a strap, or warm a child's hands against the brick. When evening arrives, The woodcutters wash their hands as well as they can and join the room near the fire. The work has left sawdust in their hair and resin on their sleeves. A bowl of hot food feels different after a day among trees. It is not only nourishment. It is evidence that the distance between forest and hearth has been crossed successfully. The house is warmer now, but the outside cold has not changed. Frost gathers at the edge of the door. A thin line of smoke slips through the roof opening. The fire gives off a gentle pop, and everyone turns toward it for a moment. In the quiet of that attention, the household is briefly united by the smallest possible event, a flame continuing to burn. Let the fire keep its own slow rhythm. The woodpile can wait beside the wall. The coppice will grow again in its patient time. The night has no need to hurry toward morning, and neither do you. The warmth of a fire is also a lesson in attention. Someone must notice when the flame is too tall, when the smoke is entering the room, when a log has rolled toward the edge, and when the embers have become quiet enough to cover. The person who tends the hearth learns the mood of the fire through color and sound. A bright snap means one thing. A low red glow means another. In a world without instruments, the hearth is read by eye, hand, and ear. Near the door, a bundle of brush waits for tomorrow. Near the bed, a small piece of wood has been placed where it will stay dry. The household has already made several decisions for the next morning without speaking about them. Winter comfort is often prepared in advance and enjoyed later by someone who may never know exactly who prepared it. Now the forest is far away, but the trees remain present in the room. They are in the coals, the handles, the bench, the roof beams, and the spoon. A whole landscape has been changed into shelter. The people sleeping beside the fire are surrounded by the memory of branches. Let the memory settle. Let the last crackle grow soft. The room is warm enough for sleep, and the dark beyond the walls can wait until daylight. The hearth has another quiet role. It gathers people who might otherwise be in separate corners. A child brings a wooden toy. A neighbor arrives with a question about a fence. Someone tells a short story while a sleeve dries. The fire makes a circle in which voices can continue after the daylight has gone. In winter, conversation is also a form of fuel. It costs no wood, yet it keeps the room occupied. The stories may be familiar, repeated from one evening to the next, but familiarity is part of their comfort. A person hears the same beginning, the same pause, the same gentle ending, and knows where the words are going. Now the voices have faded. Only the fire remains, and even the fire is becoming quiet. Let the room keep its warmth for a little longer. The fire has no opinion about the hour. It burns when it is fed, rests when it is covered, and waits for the hand that knows how to wake it. Its rhythm is simple enough to follow. Breath in, breath out, ember, ash, ember again. In the sleeping house, that rhythm becomes part of the silence. The coals glow beneath the ash. The rafters hold the smoke. The people breathe beneath their blankets, and winter remains outside the wall. No one must watch the fire forever. It has been prepared well, and preparation allows sleep. The room trusts the coals for a few hours. The ash settles over the ember like a blanket over a sleeping child. The warmth remains beneath it, quiet and protected. The dark room receives that warmth without making a sound. For a while, the fire and the sleepers share the same quiet. The winter night leans softly against the walls. The house will listen, and the fire will answer in its own time. In the morning, the person who tends the hearth will lift the ash with a small iron tool and look for the ember's red center. If it is still there, the night has passed safely. If it is not, the first task will be to begin again. Either way, the household will gather around the next flame, and the ordinary day will take its shape. The fire will answer in its own time. Beyond the village, the winter has changed the roads. A path that was familiar in October is now a puzzle of water, mud, frost, and snow. The people who use it know every bend, but knowing a path does not make it easy. A medieval road is often a memory held in the landscape rather than a firm surface laid over it. It follows the ground, climbs where it must, and disappears whenever the weather decides to cover it. Our traveler begins at first light because winter journeys must borrow every minute of daylight. He wears a wool cloak with the hood drawn forward, and beneath it, layers that have already absorbed the smell of smoke. His boots are practical rather than elegant, repaired more than once. A small pack hangs at his shoulder. Inside are bread, a little cheese, a knife, and a letter sealed with wax. The letter is not urgent in the modern sense. It may carry news of a payment, a request from a monastery, or a message between households. Yet roads are slow, and winter gives even ordinary information a long shadow. The first stretch is frozen hard. The wheel ruts from autumn have become ridges of ice. The traveler places each foot between them. Frost has made the grass silver, and the hedges hold small pockets of white. In the distance, a church tower rises above the trees, a useful landmark when the road is hidden. The sun is low and pale, and the air is so still that the traveler can hear the leather of his pack creak as he walks. At the stream below the hill, the bridge is narrow and wooden. It has been repaired many times, and one plank is darker than the others. The water beneath is not entirely frozen. It moves under a skin of ice, carrying leaves and bits of straw downstream. In a hard winter, the surface may become strong enough for a person to cross, but the decision is never made only from appearances. A traveler tests the edge with a stick. A loaded cart waits for a safer ford. The river keeps its own rules. Rivers are roads in one season and barriers in another. When the water is low, people use fords. When it rises, they depend on bridges, ferries, and boats. When it freezes, the crossing may become easier or much more dangerous. A river thick enough to bear a cart can still contain weak places near reeds, springs, and moving water. Accounts from northern regions describe winter crossings with caution, and the cautious language is wise. Ice is a road that can disappear beneath the traveler's feet. The traveler continues toward a market town. In summer, the journey might take half a day. In winter, the same distance depends on weather, daylight, and the condition of the road. A cart loses time to mud and ice. A horse tires in snow. A person on foot can move through a narrow path where wheels cannot. Merchants sometimes travel in groups, not because every road is dangerous, but because company helps with broken axles, confused directions, and the simple burden of carrying a load. The market town is built around a church, a street of workshops, and a square where traders gather on appointed days. The town gate is open during daylight, and the porter watches the road. In winter, fewer stalls are full. Fresh produce is limited by the season and by distance. Grain, salted food, cloth, leather, tools, and firewood are more reliable. A merchant's goods have already passed through many decisions. What could be grown, preserved, packed, carried, and protected from weather. At the edge of the square, a baker works before sunrise. The oven needs to be heated with a large quantity of wood, and the fire must be judged by experience. Too little heat leaves the loaves pale and heavy. Too much burns the outside before the center is ready. The baker's winter morning is therefore a conversation with the oven. Ash is pulled forward. The floor is swept. Dough that was prepared in the dark is shaped by hand and placed into the heat. The first customers arrive with cold hands. They buy bread for households that may not bake every day. A loaf is food, but it is also a carrier of warmth. When it is brought home, it gives the family something hot and substantial to eat. In a world where soups and pottages are common, bread thickens the bowl and makes a small portion feel more complete. Nearby, a blacksmith keeps his forge alive. The fire burns hotter than a household hearth, and the winter air around it is sharp with the smell of coal, charcoal, and metal. The smith works in a shirt or apron despite the cold because the heat of the forge reaches him quickly. He repairs hinges, knives, buckles, horseshoes, and tools. Winter is a season of repair. When fields are resting and long journeys are less frequent, people bring broken objects back into use. The town's river lies beyond the square. A ferry boat is pulled close to the bank, its ropes stiff with frost. The ferryman is waiting, though he would prefer the water to be kinder. A few passengers stand beneath their hoods. One carries a basket. Another has a bundle of cloth. The crossing is short, but the wind over the water is colder than the wind among the houses. The ferry moves with a slow creak, and the town recedes behind a veil of pale mist. Winter travel depends on shelter. Inns, guest houses, monasteries, and manor halls offer places to sleep, though the word uncovers many arrangements. A traveler may have a bed in a private chamber, a pallet in a shared room, or a place near the kitchen. Straw is spread and changed when possible. A fire is kept for cooking and for company. The best shelter is often not the most luxurious. It is the room with dry wood, a roof that does not leak, and someone who knows where the road continues in the morning. Monasteries are especially important on long routes. They may receive pilgrims, messengers, clerics, and the poor. The hospitality is shaped by rule and circumstance. A guest may be offered bread, ale, soup, and a place to rest. A monastery cannot shelter everyone indefinitely, but it can make one night possible. Thick walls hold back some of the wind. A cloister gives a covered path. A refectory carries the warmth of many people sharing a meal. The traveler reaches a monastery before dark. The gate opens after a brief exchange, and the porter guides him toward the guest area. Bells organize the day here, and in winter their sound seems to travel farther. A bell for prayer, a bell for meals, a bell for work. The time is not measured by a glowing face or a mechanical chime. It is carried through the air and received by people in different rooms. In the guest hall, a fire burns in a shallow hearth. The flames are modest, because even a monastery must plan its fuel. The traveler removes his boots and places them near, but not too near, the warmth. Steam rises from the leather. A brother brings a wooden bowl of pottage, dark bread, and a cup of small beer. The meal is simple, but it arrives at the moment when simplicity is enough. The guest hall contains other travelers. A woman on her way to a nearby village sits with her hands around the cup. Two men who have been driving a cart speak quietly about a bridge ahead. An old pilgrim sleeps beneath a cloak, his staff against the wall. Their stories do not need to be told. Winter creates a temporary family from people who share a roof and a fire. Outside, the road darkens. Snow begins in small grains that touch the window and vanish. The porter closes the gate. The monks continue their offices according to the hour. The traveler hears footsteps on the cloister stones and the low sound of voices in a chapel. The building is not warm by modern standards. The walls remain cold. The windows admit air. Yet the monastery has organized warmth into places and times, and that organization is a kind of shelter. If the traveler were to leave now, the road would offer no kindness. The hedges would be dark shapes. The ditches would be hidden. A person could follow a familiar path and still lose the line beneath fresh snow. Night travel is possible, but it belongs to messengers, desperate people, and those with a particular reason to risk it. Ordinary winter journeys stop when the light stops. In a nearby town, a group of merchants are deciding whether to wait another day. Their carts carry cloth and salt. The road beyond the hills is said to be passable, but a bridge has been damaged by ice. One man wants to go. Another has seen a wheel split in frozen mud. They speak over a table while a candle burns between them. Their decision is not dramatic. They will wait. A day lost is cheaper than a cart lost, and a cart lost may take a season to replace. The winter economy is full of these pauses. A shipment delayed at a river. A market moved because the road is flooded. A letter carried by a person who happened to be traveling. A repair postponed until the weather allows timber to be brought from the woods. Medieval life is often described through its great events, but the daily rhythm is made from small postponements and careful substitutions. Travelers also carry news. A town learns about a marriage, a tax, a death, a harvest, or a distant conflict through mouths and feet. In winter, news travels with the weather. A messenger may be held at a river. A letter may wait for a clear road. A story told in one warm room may reach another village weeks later, softened and rearranged by every person who repeated it. At the monastery, the traveler sleeps in a room beside the guest hall. The bed is a straw pallet, covered with a rough wool blanket. The wall is thick. A small lamp burns in a niche. Wind moves faintly through the shutters, but the fire from the hall reaches the corridor as a low warmth. The traveler listens to the building settle. Timber creaks. A bell sounds once. Somewhere, a horse moves in the stable. The next morning, the road may be open, or it may not. The traveler will eat what he has been given, thank the porter, and look at the sky. He will test the ground near the gate. He will tie his pack again and begin only when the light is sufficient. A winter journey is not a single movement from one place to another. It is a chain of decisions, each one answering the weather. For now, let the road rest. Let the ferry remain tied. Let the market square become quiet beneath its thin cover of snow. The baker has banked the oven. The blacksmith has covered the forge. The monastery gate is closed, and the guest hall fire has settled into a patient glow. If you listen closely, you may hear the road beneath the story, the soft crunch of frost, the wooden knock of a cart, the distant bell, the slow creak of a ferry rope. Nothing is rushing. The next place is waiting, and you may reach it when the night is ready. The traveler's pack is small because every object must justify its weight. A spare cord can repair a strap. A little wax can protect a seam. A folded piece of cloth can become a bandage, a towel, or a cover for bread. A knife cuts food, trims leather, shapes wood, and opens a stubborn knot. The medieval road is filled with such multi-purpose things, objects that are ordinary precisely because they are useful in more than one way. At a roadside shrine, the traveler pauses. The shrine is a small shelter of stone or timber, perhaps with a painted figure or a candle protected from the wind. It is not an inn, but it gives the road a place to gather itself. A person can stand beneath its roof, adjust a boot, and wait for a snow shower to pass. The shrine also tells travelers that others have come this way, carried by the same weather and the same need to continue. The road's edges are full of small evidence. A broken branch shows where a cart has brushed the hedge. A dark patch indicates water beneath the ice. A line of footprints leads toward a farmstead, while a second line returns. A person accustomed to the landscape reads these marks almost without thinking. The road is not a blank surface. It is a page written by animals, wheels, rain, and feet. In the town, a clerk records a shipment that has arrived late. The parchment does not mention the cold in a poetic way. It notes that the cart came after the expected day, that 2 sacks were damp, and that the bridge required repair. Yet these practical details are winter's signature. They show how weather enters trade, taxes, contracts, and the price of a loaf. A town gate becomes a place of waiting. Carts line up while a porter checks names or goods. A horse is given a mouthful of feed. A traveler stamps frozen feet. The gatehouse has a brazier, and people stand near it without speaking much. The warmth is shared by proximity, not by agreement. One person steps away, another steps forward, and the red coals continue to serve whoever arrives. At dusk, the road beyond the town is almost invisible. The last travelers choose shelter. A woman is met by a cousin who has come with a lantern. Two apprentices carry a basket between them. A messenger lifts his hood and checks the direction of the monastery's bell. The choices are modest, but each prevents a more difficult night. Winter rewards people who stop before they are exhausted. Inside the monastery guest hall, the fire has been replenished. A pair of wet gloves hangs from a peg. A pot is warming near the hearth. The traveler unwraps his letter, checks that the wax has not cracked, and places it under his cloak. The message has crossed the road safely. Tomorrow it will continue, but tonight it can rest. The other guests fall quiet one by one. A candle shortens. Someone coughs and then settles. The porter closes the inner door, reducing the movement of cold air. The room does not become warm in the way a modern room becomes warm. It becomes less exposed. The wind is muffled, the floor covered, the bodies arranged close, and the fire allowed to make its small circle. In the middle of the night, a bell rings from the chapel. The traveler wakes and hears the sound travel through the building. For a moment, the road is still present in his body. The distance walked, the cold in the knees, the pressure of the pack. Then the warmth of the blanket returns his attention to the room. The bell fades. The fire ticks. Sleep comes back slowly, without instruction. By morning, the sky is clear. The road may still be difficult, but a clear sky gives the traveler confidence. He eats bread and porridge, ties his boots, and steps outside. The snow reflects a little rose-colored light. The monastery stands behind him, its smoke rising straight in the calm air. The road is not kind, but it is visible. That is enough. A person begins with one step, then another, carrying a letter, a loaf, a tool, or simply the promise of reaching home before dark. The winter world opens a narrow line ahead, and the traveler follows it at the pace of the season. Let that pace become yours now. One slow step, one quiet breath, the small crunch of frost underfoot. The market town fades behind the hills. The ferry rope rests beside the water. The monastery bell is distant, and the road continues through the pale morning. The traveler does not need to know the entire road. He needs only the next landmark, the bent ash tree, the low bridge, the field gate, the smoke rising behind the hill. Medieval journeys are made from nearby certainties. A person reaches one point and then receives enough information for the next. The road unfolds in small pieces, and that is why it can be followed even when the distance ahead is hidden. In winter, the world is quieter, so the landmarks may be heard as well as seen. A mill wheel turns beneath ice. A dog barks from a farmstead. A bell carries across a valley. A river speaks beneath its frozen surface. These sounds give the traveler a sense of direction when the snow has softened the shape of the fields. At last, the traveler sees the roof of home. The letter is still under his cloak. The bread is still wrapped. The day is not yet dark. He has not conquered the winter road. He has simply crossed it with care, and that is enough. Let the road end here. Let the gate close behind the traveler. The snow can fall again, but for this moment there is a roof, a fire, and a place where the pack may be set down. A road is also a line of memory between people. The traveler carries the warmth of the monastery to the house ahead, not as a visible flame, but as a sentence about a safe bridge, a generous bowl, or a room with a working latch. News travels with the body, and kindness travels in the same way. The road will be used again tomorrow. Footprints will overlap. A cart will make new ruts. A bird will cross the hedge. For now, it is empty beneath the moon, and the empty road is peaceful when no one needs to cross it. The empty road belongs to the night. Snow softens the edges, moonlight rests on the bridge, and the last sound of the traveler's footsteps disappears into the valley. The road has carried enough for one day. The bridge is quiet now. Water moves below the ice, carrying the dark toward the sea. A lantern in the monastery fades behind the hill. The traveler is under a roof, and the road can sleep too. Tomorrow will bring another crossing, another landmark, another careful step. Tonight, the journey is complete enough. The road has given the traveler a roof, and the roof has given him sleep. Nothing more is required of the night. The last footprint softens beneath falling snow. The valley holds the road until morning. The quiet is enough. The traveler sleeps beneath the roof. At the edge of the town, the road waits beneath its white cover. The bridge waits. The ferry waits. A new traveler will come when the sky is light enough, and the old path will receive another set of footprints. The world continues by these small arrivals, each one taking the next careful step. Until then, the snow keeps the road quiet. Winter changes the color of food. In summer, a medieval table may hold fresh leaves, berries, young onions, milk, and fruit brought in from a nearby orchard. In winter, the table becomes browner and whiter. Bread, porridge, dried peas, salted meat, hard cheese, turnips, onions, and the pale surfaces of stored roots. The food is not necessarily joyless. A hot bowl can be deeply comforting, but the season narrows the choices and makes every preserved thing important. Our evening now moves into a farmhouse where the stores have been counted twice. The household has a loft for grain, a cool corner for roots, and a rack where strips of meat hang above the smoke. No single storage method is perfect. Grain must stay dry. Roots must not freeze completely or rot in dampness. Salted meat must be protected from animals. Apples bruise. Cheese changes with air and temperature. Winter food is alive with small risks, and the people who manage it learn to read them. The first store is grain. Wheat, rye, barley, oats, and other cereals differ by region and wealth, but they are the foundation of much medieval eating. Grain can become flour, bread, gruel, porridge, or ale. It can be ground in a mill or crushed at home. A household saves the best seed for the next planting, keeps a portion for dues, and consumes the remainder according to need. In years of shortage, the order becomes uncomfortable. Seed must be protected even while hunger is present, because spring cannot be abandoned entirely. In the loft, sacks are raised from the floor when possible. Dampness is an enemy. So are mice and insects. A cat moves along a beam, and a child is sent to check the corners. The work is ordinary, repeated, and never finally complete. Grain storage is a conversation with unseen life. A family may know that several measures have disappeared without knowing exactly how many small mouths have taken them. Below the loft, roots sit in a pit or a cool room. Turnips, parsnips, carrots, onions, and cabbages have different habits. Some last well under earth. Some must be kept dry. Cabbage may be salted or fermented, producing a sharp smell and a food that can be eaten long after the fresh leaves are gone. Medieval people did not describe their stores with the language of modern nutrition, but they understood the practical value of variety. A household that has only grain has calories. A household with grain, beans, roots, and salt has more ways to remain well. The winter pot is therefore a kind of household archive. It contains what the year allowed: a handful of beans from the field, an onion from the garden, a shred of cabbage, a bone saved from an earlier meal, herbs dried during summer. The cook adds water and waits. The longer the pot simmers, the more the ingredients soften and the more the kitchen fills with a smell that makes the room feel occupied. Pottage is one of the great quiet foods of the medieval world. It is not one recipe. It is a method, a warm liquid meal made from whatever can be spared. In a prosperous household, it may include meat, spices, butter, or wine. In a poor household, it may be mostly grain and vegetables. The word pottage tells us less about taste than about adaptability. A pot can receive a little more water when another person arrives. It can receive a little more grain when hunger is stronger. It can wait beside the fire without demanding constant attention. Bread provides another steady center. Medieval bread is not one color or texture. Wheat makes lighter loaves, while rye and barley produce darker, denser bread. Some loaves are coarse with bran. Some are mixed with peas or other grains when flour is scarce. Bread can be dipped into pottage, carried on a journey, or used to thicken a bowl. When it becomes stale, it is not necessarily thrown away. It is toasted, soaked, ground, or given to animals. The farmhouse oven is warm for a short time, and the heat is used carefully. Bread is baked first, then smaller items may follow while the oven cools. In some households, food is cooked in a pot over the hearth rather than an enclosed oven. The arrangement depends on place, wealth, building, and custom. What remains constant is the need to use heat efficiently. A fire that has taken wood cannot be allowed to warm only one loaf. Salt preserves, but salt must be obtained. A coastal household may have easier access to salt fish or sea salt. Inland households may buy salt through markets, roads, and trade. The price and availability vary. Salted meat must be soaked or cooked with care, and the flavor can be strong. It is not a modern refrigerator. It is a way of holding food across a season, with a taste that announces the method. Smoking changes meat and fish through air, heat, and time. The strips hang where smoke can reach them, often above a kitchen hearth. The room is darker and the rafters blacker, but the food lasts longer. A family may choose wood partly for the quality of its smoke. The same fire that warms the house also becomes a preservation tool, and the kitchen becomes a slow chamber of transformation. Cheese is another winter bridge. Milk is abundant in some seasons, but not all animals continue producing it at the same rate through the cold months. Cheese allows milk to be turned into a stored food. The varieties available to medieval households differ widely, from fresh curds to firmer forms that can be kept. A cheese is a little landscape of time. It carries the grass of the past season into the months when the fields are brown. Ale and other fermented drinks are part of the household's liquid diet. Water sources can be uncertain, and brewing transforms grain into a drink that keeps. The strength varies. Some alesh are mild and consumed by adults and children alike. Brewing also provides a warm, nourishing liquid when the weather is cold. The brew house, where one exists, is a place of steam, grain, and fire, and its work is another form of winter labor. The farmhouse family eats supper near the hearth. The bowls are wooden or ceramic, depending on region and wealth. Spoons may be shared. A knife is personal, useful for bread, meat, and all manner of small tasks. There is no neat separation between kitchen, dining room, and living room. The meal happens where the heat is. The firelight turns the surfaces of the bowls amber and makes the steam look like a small cloud. The first mouthful is hot enough to slow everyone down. The family blows gently, waits, and eats. A child dips bread. An older person chooses the softest vegetables. An animal lies beneath the bench and hopes that something will fall. The meal is not silent, but the sound is close and domestic. Spoons, low voices, a log breaking, the small cough of someone who has swallowed too quickly. Food shortage is not always visible as an empty room. It can appear as a gradual change. More bran in the bread, more water in the pottage, fewer eggs. A piece of meat saved for a feast rather than used on an ordinary day. A family may rely on wild greens when the weather permits, or on nuts and berries dried from the previous year. In towns, charity and religious houses may provide bread or soup. In manors, dues and rents can be adjusted in some circumstances and enforced harshly in others. The records are uneven, and the human experience is not identical from one place to another. The words famine and hunger describe more than one kind of winter. A single harsh season may follow a bad harvest, and a community may have no reserve. A region may be cut off by floods, war, or a closed road. Livestock may die, reducing milk and future breeding stock. The most dangerous winter is often the winter that begins before the stores are ready. In a safer year, the same cold can be endured with patience and routine. In the farmhouse cellar, a woman checks a jar of preserved food. The lid is wooden or cloth, and the surface is inspected for mold. She does not have a laboratory to tell her what is safe. She has experience, smell, sight, and the knowledge passed through the household. Food preservation is a practical science carried in hands. The record of it is often invisible because success produces no dramatic event. The meal simply arrives. At a manor, the winter kitchen is larger and more specialized. There may be a baker, brewer, cook, butcher, dairy worker, and servants assigned to stores. The household consumes more, but it may also preserve more efficiently. Salt, spices, wine, and preserved fruits are markers of wealth. Yet the basic tasks remain recognizable: dry, cool, smoke, salt, ferment, count, and wait. At a monastery, meals follow a timetable. The rule may limit meat on certain days, but fish, eggs, cheese, grains, vegetables, and legumes sustain the community. A monastic kitchen stores food for many people, and the guest house extends the chain to strangers. The kitchen's fire is therefore part of the monastery's hospitality. When the bell calls for a meal, bowls are filled because someone has planned months in advance. After supper, the family prepares for sleep. A small portion of food may be kept for the morning. The pot is not entirely cleaned, because its remaining warmth and flavor can become the beginning of the next meal. Bread is wrapped. The fire is lowered. The food stores return to silence. Beneath the roof, winter rests in the form of sacks, jars, hooks, and a few covered bowls. Imagine the quiet after the meal, the soft scent of onion and smoke, the warmth inside the mouth, the weight of bread in the stomach. There is no need to judge the food by modern standards. It did what it needed to do. It carried the household through another dark evening, and it made a little comfort from what the year had provided. Outside, snow touches the roof. Inside, the pottage cools. A cat curls beneath the bench. Someone checks the latch. The granary is dark, the cellar is cool, and the hearth holds a red glow beneath the ash. The winter has not been defeated. It has been met with a pot, a loaf, and the patient work of preserving one season for the next. Let the kitchen settle now. Let the stored grain rest in its sacks. The apples sleep in their straw. The beans wait in their basket. And the last warmth of supper travel slowly through the room. We will leave the farmhouse for a while and follow the people who must work through the coldest hours, wrapped in wool and quiet. There is a particular patience in a winter pantry. Nothing is taken without a reason. A person reaching for a jar considers the meals ahead. A child asking for another piece of bread hears the softness or firmness of the answer. A cook knows that a handful of peas used tonight will not be available tomorrow, but also knows that a body needs food now. The pantry is where the future and the present meet in every small decision. Some foods are made to last because they are made at the end of summer. Apples are dried in slices. Plums or pears may be preserved where the climate and household allow it. Herbs are hung in bunches. Mushrooms can be dried in the moving air above the hearth. Grain is threshed, winnowed, and stored. The work happens when the days are long, but its purpose is the dark months ahead. The drying rack above the fire holds more than food. It holds the memory of sun. A strip of apple curls as it loses its water. An herb leaf becomes brittle. Smoke moves through the space and leaves its faint taste. When the dried food is later soaked or cooked, the summer returns in a small, altered form. At a coastal settlement, fish is prepared in a rhythm controlled by wind and salt. The fish are cleaned, divided, salted, or hung. A winter storm may make the work unpleasant, but the result can travel inland. In an inland manner, fish arrives through trade, already dried or salted, and is part of the year's calendar of religious meals. The distance between coast and village is contained in a piece of food. The same is true of salt. A small white crystal may have come from a salt pan, a mine, or a distant market. It has crossed roads and water before it reaches the wooden box in a farmhouse kitchen. The household uses it carefully because its value is visible each time a pinch falls between the fingers. A winter meal can be improved by texture as much as by abundance. Toasted bread gives a crust. A few fried onions change the smell of the pot. A spoon of fat adds richness. An herb brings brightness to beans that have been eaten for weeks. Medieval cooks knew these changes through practice, and the knowledge was passed by watching rather than measuring. In a kitchen shared by many people, there is also the work of feeding those who cannot contribute at the moment. An injured laborer, an old neighbor, a child, or a traveler may receive a bowl. Religious houses distribute food according to custom and resources. Charity is not always generous, and it is not always enough. But the idea that a warm meal can be owed to a stranger is one of the quiet threads running through medieval winter life. The meal is finished. The bowls are rinsed. The last crumbs are not ignored. They may be saved for a bird, a dog, or a later thickening of the pot. The kitchen floor is swept. The cook checks the hooks and lids. A winter pantry is safest when it is orderly, because disorder hides loss. Now the house is ready for sleep. The grain is dry. The roots are cool. The salt is covered. The fire has done its work. The family carries the warmth of the meal into the dark room, and the stored food waits quietly for the next day. The pantry is also a record of trust. One person harvested, another dried. Someone else turned the cheese, watched the smoke, or remembered how deep the root pit should be. A meal in winter is never only the work of the person holding the spoon. It is the end of a chain of care that began months earlier, when the fields were green and the evenings were long. That chain continues into the future. A seed is kept because it belongs to spring. A jar is left unopened because another week may be harder. A bone is saved because it can flavor one more pot. The household carries tomorrow inside today's decisions, quietly and without ceremony. The fire sinks lower. The smell of food remains in the room, mingling with smoke and wool. The family sleeps near the stores that will keep them alive. Above them, the loft is dark. Below them, the cellar is cool. Between the two, the hearth holds a small island of warmth. Let that island hold you now. The meal is finished. The pantry is safe. Nothing needs to be counted until morning. The household's final act in the kitchen is to cover the pot. The cloth keeps dust away and holds a little warmth. In the morning, the cook will add water, perhaps another onion, perhaps a handful of grain, and the old meal will become new enough to eat again. Winter cooking is a way of carrying yesterday forward without pretending it is the same day. The covered pot rests beside the coals. The room smells of bread and ash. Outside, the stored food is surrounded by cold. Inside, it is guarded by darkness and a sleeping family. The pot will be there when morning comes, waiting quietly beside the first small flame. Nothing needs to be hurried. The food has already done its work for tonight. The kitchen has finished its long conversation with the harvest. Grain, root, salt, smoke, and water have become a warm meal. The family carries that quiet nourishment into sleep. The stores remain quiet. The household has enough for this night, and this night is enough. The grain waits in darkness, patient as the earth beneath the frost. The household sleeps above it, and the quiet stores keep their promise. The night is fed, and the room can rest. The morning can wait. The pot waits beside the coals. At first light, the cook will uncover it and find that the flavors have deepened during the night. A little water will loosen the thickened grain. A little salt will wake the vegetables. The same pot will become breakfast, and the family will begin the day with food that has traveled quietly through darkness. The first spoonful will be warm. There is a kind of winter work that leaves no pile behind. It is the work of staying warm. A person rises, dresses, moves through a room, and carries the cold in the spaces between those actions. Clothing must be found, fastened, dried, mended, and shared. Beds must be made with whatever filling is available. Blankets are aired when the weather allows, and brought close when it does not. In a small house, morning begins with layers. A wool garment is lifted from a peg. It is not perfectly dry because the house has no separate heated cupboard, and yesterday's damp has remained in the fabric. Someone holds it near the hearth, turning it slowly. The heat reaches one side, then the other. A sleeve is checked for a tear. A child is wrapped in a smaller piece of cloth before the outer garment is fastened. Medieval clothing was made from labor before it was made from cloth. Wool had to be raised, shorn, cleaned, spun, woven, fulled, dyed when possible, cut, and repaired. Linen followed another sequence. Leather needed tanning and shaping. A cloak represented many hours of work, and its condition was watched. The garment that looks rough in a modern illustration may have been valuable precisely because it protected its owner from rain, wind, and the long loss of body heat. The word cloak suggests one large item, but the experience of warmth depends on many small decisions. A hood covers the neck. A belt closes a gap. Leg coverings protect the space above the shoe. Mittens are warmer than gloves because the fingers share their heat. A cap keeps warmth from escaping through the head, whether or not medieval people described it in those terms. When the wind enters a doorway, clothing becomes a portable room. In a wealthy house, furs and lined garments add another layer. In a poor house, the same purpose may be served by patched wool, straw in a shoe, or a cloak borrowed from another household member. The range of medieval life is wide, but no one is warm by accident. Warmth is made by material, closeness, and the decision to spend time preparing for weather. By afternoon, a farm worker has become warm through movement. Carrying water, repairing a fence, cutting wood, and tending animals all create heat. The problem arrives when the work stops. Sweat cools against the cloth. A person returns to the house and stands beside the fire, not too close, because rapid heat can be uncomfortable and damp fabric may steam. The body has to return to stillness gradually. At night, the bed becomes the center of the household's private winter. The bed may be simple. It may be a raised wooden frame, a straw-filled mattress, a sack of reeds, or a heap of hay in a loft. In other settings, it may have ropes, a wooden chest-like structure, woolen blankets, and curtains. The differences are real, but the purpose is shared. Keep the body above the cold floor and inside a pocket of trapped warmth. Straw is a practical filling. It is available after harvest, light enough to carry, and capable of holding air. It flattens. It becomes dusty. It must be changed. A bed of fresh straw smells like the field, while an old bed remembers every season it has carried. In a wealthy room, feathers may fill a mattress or pillow, but feathers are not magic. They compress, shift, and require covering. The most comfortable bed is still inside a cold room unless its curtains and blankets are arranged well. Bed curtains make a room within a room. They slow the movement of air and hold the warmth of the sleepers. In a great bed, curtains can be drawn around every side. In a simpler arrangement, a cloth hanging or a canopy gives some protection. A family may sleep close together beneath one cover, with children placed in the middle. This is not a strange exception. It is one of the oldest ways of keeping warmth where it is needed. People did not always sleep for one uninterrupted stretch. The timing of sleep depended on the season, the light, the workday, and the customs of the household. Some may have woken in the middle of the night, prayed, talked, tended a fire, or simply remained awake for a while before returning to sleep. The darkness was long enough to have its own middle. In winter, the hours before dawn could feel like a separate country. In a farmhouse, a person might wake to add fuel or check an animal. In a town, a baker may rise before the first bell to begin the oven. In a castle, the watch changes at appointed times. In a monastery, the night offices call some monks from their dormitory while others remain sleeping. Each community makes a different agreement with the dark. The dormitory of a monastery is a long room with many beds. Privacy is limited. The sound of one person turning may travel to another. Windows are narrow. The floor is cold. A monk rises for prayer, pulling a habit around the body, while another sleeps through the hour. The discipline of the place does not remove winter. It gives winter a schedule. The work of warming also includes water. Washing in winter is more complicated when water must be carried, heated, and poured. A full bath is not an ordinary daily event for most people. Hands, face, and the parts of the body that need attention are washed when possible. Linen is changed when it can be. Clothing is aired and beaten. The idea of cleanliness is shaped by fuel, access to water, work, and custom. Heat spent on washing is heat not spent on cooking, though the two may happen near the same hearth. In a town, a bathhouse may offer a different arrangement. Bathing and social life can meet in a warm room where water and would have been gathered for many people. The practice varies across periods and regions, and not every bathhouse survives every religious or civic change. Yet wherever warm water is available, winter makes its comfort obvious. A person leaves a cold street, enters steam, and briefly lives in a climate made by human effort. The poor often solve the problem through movement and proximity. A child sleeps near an adult. A servant works close to the kitchen. A worker rests beside animals in a stable loft, where the heat of hay and bodies creates a surprisingly gentle air. The stable is not perfectly clean, but it is dry, and dryness is a kind of wealth in winter. Animals change the temperature of the built world. A cow in a stall gives off heat. Horses breathe into the dark. Chickens gather together. A dog follows a person from room to room, seeking the hearth and offering a little warmth in return. The medieval household is a mixed ecology, and the boundary between human and animal space is not always sharp. At the end of a working day, the family checks the clothing for tomorrow. A torn sock is repaired. A cloak is folded near the bed. Wet boots are placed where air can reach them. The fire is not large enough to dry everything quickly, so priorities are chosen. The garments needed in the morning are given the best place. A child's sleeve is turned inside out. A pair of gloves is shared. The room grows quiet. Someone brings a warm stone wrapped in cloth and places it near the bed. The stone holds the heat for a while, longer than a hand can. The blankets are pulled around the shoulders. The fire sends a low orange light onto the wall. A person lies down still dressed in a tunic, or in a nightshirt, or beneath a cloak that has served as clothing all day. The exact arrangement varies, but the body recognizes the same invitation. Lie still, breathe slowly, conserve what warmth you have. Cold changes the sound of a room. Wool brushes against wool. Straw shifts beneath a body. The roof creaks when the temperature falls. Wind presses on shutters. A person coughs, and someone else turns over. The sounds are small, but they tell the sleepers that the household remains together. Winter illnesses were part of this world, though no one had a single modern explanation for them. Cold alone does not create every sickness, but cold buildings, smoke-filled air, limited food, damp clothing, and crowded sleeping spaces can make people vulnerable. Medieval writers describe fevers, coughs, and weakness in different languages, and the records are uneven. We should not turn every winter into a catastrophe, but we should remember that comfort was not equally distributed. Care often took the form of warmth. A broth brought to the bed, a cloth warmed by the fire, a child held close, herbs steeped in water, a neighbor visiting when travel was possible. The household had few instruments, but it had hands, blankets, and the ancient understanding that an ill person should not be left alone in the cold. In a manner, a private chamber may hold a larger bed, a brazier, and curtains thick enough to make a softer climate. The chamber also contains servants. A maid sleeps nearby. A child may share the bed. A fire must be guarded. The distinction between luxury and necessity is not always clear. A lord has more material, but still wakes when the wind shakes the shutters. At last, the household returns to sleep. The clothes are on the peg. The boots wait near the wall. The stone has cooled beneath the blanket. The fire is banked. The bodies are arranged close enough to share warmth without disturbing one another. Outside, winter crosses the roof in snow and shadow. Let yourself imagine the texture of the bed, straw giving way slowly, wool settling over the shoulders, the faint smell of smoke in the room. Imagine the warmth that arrives not all at once, but by degrees. First the hands, then the feet, then the space beneath the blanket. The old house has no switch to turn, only the patient work of arranging what it has. There is no need to wake. The medieval sleepers do not wake either. Their night moves through the long dark, through fire and frost, through the soft interruption of a bell. The clothes remain folded, the animals breathe in the stall, and the bed holds the body until morning. We will leave them there for now. Let the winter room become dim. Let the walls grow quiet around the sleeping household. Beyond the window, the snow continues its slow work, covering the road, the hedge, and the fields that will one day turn green again. The sleeping household has a geography of its own. The warmest place is not always beside the hearth. Heat rises, so a loft may hold a gentler air. A wall shared with a kitchen may be warmer than a wall facing the lane. A bed beneath the roof may feel the wind more strongly, while a lower room remains still. People learn these places through experience and move their sleeping arrangements when the season demands it. The bedding itself carries many histories. A mattress may contain straw from one harvest and be refilled with straw from another. A blanket may have been woven by a grandmother, traded at a market, or repaired at the edge so many times that the original cloth is difficult to see. A pillow may be stuffed with wool scraps, feathers, or folded garments. Nothing is neutral. Every material has been grown, gathered, spun, sewn, dried, or saved. When bedding is aired, it is taken outside on a clear day and beaten, shaken, or spread where sunlight can reach it. The work is difficult in winter because clear days are short and damp returns quickly. Even so, fresh air is valuable. A bed that has been opened to the cold may smell cleaner afterward, and the person who sleeps in it may notice the difference before falling asleep. In a castle or manor, the great bed is also a public symbol. Its curtains, carved posts, and thick textiles show status, but the physical function remains practical. A large bed gathers people, servants, children, and sometimes visitors. The room within the room is warmer than the chamber around it. Privacy and warmth arrive together, though not equally for everyone who sleeps there. In a poorer home, the bed may be a shared mat. A family learns to turn without uncovering another person. Children sleep across the foot or between adults. A dog chooses the edge. When someone rises, the blanket is tucked carefully so that the gap does not grow too wide. The actions are automatic after years of repetition. Winter also changes how long a person remains in bed. Darkness arrives early and light arrives late. There are fewer reasons to rise in the middle of the night unless the household needs attention. A person may wake, listen, and return to sleep. The long dark is not empty time. It is filled with the body's gradual movements between one sleep and another. A candle in the room can alter everything. It gives enough light to find a garment, tend a child, or say a prayer. It also consumes fuel. A household therefore learns to use the smallest flame that will do the work. The candle is cupped from drafts. The wick is trimmed. When it is extinguished, the darkness feels complete again. Near dawn, the room is coldest. The fire has been banked for hours. The clothing is still, and the night's warmth has settled into the bedding. The person who wakes first does not leap up. They remain still, gathering courage and locating the garment. A hand reaches toward the edge of the blanket. A foot tests the floor. The day begins in stages. Let that slow beginning remain with you. No alarm is sounding. No one is asking you to hurry. The old room understands the value of staying under the blanket for one more breath, one more quiet moment, before the work of the world returns. In the hour before dawn, a winter house can feel almost suspended. The walls, the roof, the blankets, and the sleeping bodies are all holding the same small amount of heat. Outside, the frost is at its deepest. Inside, the fire is only a memory of flame. Yet the room is not empty. It contains the soft persistence of breathing, the faint scent of straw, and the knowledge that morning will be made by a hand reaching toward the ash. When that hand finally moves, it does not have to move quickly. A blanket is lifted. A garment is found. A coal is uncovered. The first twig catches. A pale light enters the room, and the household begins again. The winter has not changed, but the people have carried themselves through another night. Let the blanket settle once more. Let the old room remain suspended. Morning can wait beyond the edge of sleep. The old household knows that sleep is not wasted time. It is the interval in which the body gathers enough strength for the next cold task. A person may wake with stiff fingers, but they have rested. A child may dream beneath the blanket, but the child is growing. The winter day will ask for labor, and the night has given what it can. Let the blanket remain heavy and kind. Let the room breathe around you. The fire will be found when it is needed. For now, the room remains dark and warm enough. The old sleepers are not counting the hours. They are simply resting inside them. The cold may return at dawn, but dawn is still far away. The blanket holds. The walls stand. The old house knows how to wait. Rest now in the held warmth, without counting how long it will last. The old bed does not ask for anything. It simply carries the sleeper until the light returns. The room is still, and the sleeper is safe inside its stillness. The blanket rises and falls with the breath beneath it. The cold stays beyond the cloth. The room will remain kind. When morning arrives, the sleeper will reach toward the garment laid beside the bed. The body will leave the warmth slowly, carrying a little of it into the room. The blanket will be folded, the straw will settle, and the bed will wait for the evening when it can hold the same tired body again. For now, the sleeper can remain still. We have reached the deepest part of the winter night, and before we let you drift completely away, let us visit one last place. It is a monastery in the hills, built where the road bends beside a stream. The walls are stone. The roofs are dark with frost. A small lamp burns near the gate, and beyond it, the buildings gather around a cloister that holds a square of snow beneath the stars. The monastery does not stand outside the winter. It receives it carefully. Water freezes in shaded places. The kitchen fire needs wood. The dormitory is cold before the sleepers arrive. The gardens are brown and quiet. In the scriptorium, hands move more slowly when the fingers are stiff. Yet the community has a timetable, and a timetable is one way of making a long season bearable. Before dawn, a bell sounds. Its note travels through the dark passages and over the roofs. Some monks rise from their beds. Others wake briefly and listen. The bell does not explain the weather. It does not promise an easy harvest. It simply marks an hour, telling the people inside the walls that the night has moved forward. In the dormitory, blankets shift. A monk pulls a wool habit around his shoulders. Another sits on the edge of the bed and waits for his eyes to adjust. The room has no bright light, only a candle or lamp carried by someone who knows the way. Feet touch the cold floor. A door opens. The corridor is darker than the dormitory, and the chapel beyond it is darker still. The monks walk together, not because they are all equally awake, but because the rule gathers them. In the chapel, a small flame shines before the altar. The stone walls hold the sound of the first prayers. Words rise and fall in a rhythm that belongs to the hour. Outside, snow rests on the branches. Inside, the candle flame bends when the door closes. The night office is not a dramatic scene. It is repetition, patience, and sound. The same passages return. The same voices join and separate. A person who has been awake in a cold room may find that the rhythm carries the body more gently than thought. The mind has less to decide when the words and movements are known. After the office, the community divides into small tasks. Someone checks the kitchen. Someone brings water. Someone tends the fire in the warming room, if the monastery has one. Someone returns to the scriptorium to prepare ink. Winter work is often the work of making tomorrow possible. In the kitchen, a brother lifts the lid of a pot. Steam opens above it. The meal will be simple: bread, porridge, beans, perhaps cheese or fish depending on the rule and the stores. A monastery's pantry is organized, but organization does not make it endless. Sacks are counted. Jars are labeled in the knowledge of the people who filled them. The kitchen is warmest near the hearth, and everyone who enters carries a little of that warmth away. The scriptorium is quieter. A desk stands near a window, though the window gives more gray light than warmth. A monk warms his fingers before beginning. The parchment is pale. The pen must be held with care. Ink behaves differently in cold air. It thickens. It dries slowly or too quickly depending on the room. A small brazier may be placed nearby, but too much heat can damage materials. The work proceeds at the speed of the season. The pages being copied may contain prayers, histories, medical knowledge, accounts, or the words of an earlier author. The people who copy them may never travel beyond the valley, yet their winter hands preserve sentences for centuries. A page is made in a room where someone is listening to wind against the shutters. By mid-morning, the monastery's guests begin to stir. A pilgrim has slept in the guest hall. A carter has arrived with a broken wheel. A woman from a nearby village has brought eggs or a message. Hospitality is not an abstract virtue here. It is a bowl, a blanket, a dry place for boots, and the willingness to share the fire for a night. The guest hall smells of straw, wool, and smoke. Beds are arranged close. A person who has traveled through snow can recognize a good room without needing to see its decoration. The roof does not leak. The latch works. The fire has been tended. Someone has left a cup where it can be found. The monastery also keeps animals. In the stable, horses stand in their stalls. The hayloft is warmer than the yard. A brother checks the animal's water, breaks the ice, and carries feed. The horse's breath clouds the stable air. Their quiet chewing is one of the most peaceful sounds in winter. A living creature eating is a promise that the day has not become entirely empty. Beyond the stable, the fields lie under a pale covering. The soil is resting, though resting does not mean dead. Beneath the frost, roots wait. Seeds wait. The shape of next year has already been placed in the ground or in the storehouse. A medieval farmer may not speak of dormancy in modern language, but the experience is familiar. Winter holds life in a hidden form. The hills around the monastery are white on the north-facing slopes and brown where the sun reaches. The stream remains open in the middle, moving between plates of ice. A raven crosses the valley. Smoke from the kitchen rises, bends, and disappears. From a distance, the monastery looks small, almost fragile, but its walls have been arranged around a series of dependable acts. Light the fire, grind the grain, ring the bell, feed the animals, welcome the traveler, copy the page, sleep, rise, and begin again. Those acts are the opposite of a winter crisis. They are not exciting, and that is why they matter. Most people endure a season through ordinary repetition. A log is split. A pot is stirred. A garment is mended. A roof is checked. A bed is made. A bell rings. The cold remains, but the day has a shape. Outside the monastery, the villages are doing the same. In one house, someone is turning stored apples so that the bruised side does not rot. In another, a boy is scraping ice from a trough. A woman is repairing a sleeve beside the hearth. A farmer is counting the remaining seed grain. In a town, the baker is feeding the oven, and a watchman is looking down a lane where snow has covered the wheel tracks. The medieval winter is not a single story of misery. It contains difficulty, certainly, and inequality, hunger, illness, and the fear of a bad harvest. It also contains skill, humor, patience, and the comfort of shared work. The people of the season know that warmth is never guaranteed, but they know how to make it. They know which wall leaks, which tree burns well, which neighbor has a spare blanket, which animals should be brought indoors, and which food can wait until spring. As the weeks pass, the winter changes by small degrees. The days lengthen almost too slowly to notice. A patch of roof, snow becomes water. The stream carries more sound. The road softens. Mud replaces ice, and the mud is difficult in its own way, but it announces movement. A bird returns to the hedge. A child finds a green point near the garden wall. Spring does not arrive as a door opening. It arrives as a collection of permissions. The fire need not be fed quite so often. A person can work outside for another hour. A window can stay open. The animals can be led farther from the stable. The first greens can be gathered. The household's winter food still matters, but the world has begun to offer something fresh. The monastery garden shows the change first. Snow retreats from a sheltered wall. The earth is dark and wet. A monk turns the soil, and the smell of it rises, rich and cold. In the orchard, buds are small and closed. The future is present only as a promise. A promise is enough for now. Let us return to the farmhouse where we began. The family has made it through another night. The fire was banked, the bed held, the food was counted, and morning came. The child who gathered kindling has grown a little stronger. The woman who sorted beans has begun to save a few seeds. The farmer has repaired a tool beside the hearth. Their winter was not easy, but it had been made from many small successes. The road beyond the village is passable again. The bridge is wet. The cart ruts are full of water. A traveler steps around a puddle and hears a bird in the bare hedge. The monastery bell sounds behind him, no longer swallowed by snow. In the market town, the baker opens the door of the warm oven, and the first loaf of a new morning begins to brown. You do not need to follow the traveler. You can remain in the warm room, listening to the fire. The old houses have become quiet around you. The people who lived in them have gone to sleep, or begun their work, or stepped outside to meet the pale weather. The centuries between their night and yours are long, but the shape of rest is close. Every winter night contains the same simple movements. A person notices the cold. A person gathers warmth. A person eats what has been stored. A person repairs something that must last. A person lies down near another breathing body and lets the dark carry the day away. The materials change. The roofs change. The names change. The need for shelter remains. So let the winter settle now, gently, without any need to be solved. Let the snow rest on the monastery roof. Let the coals glow beneath the ash. Let the farmhouse door remain closed against the wind. The watchman has taken his place. The baker has begun his fire, and the bell will keep the hours for everyone. There is nothing left for you to remember tonight. The wood has been gathered. The food has been kept. The bed is ready. You may let your breathing become slow and even, like the quiet breath of a horse in the stable, or the soft wind moving over a field that is waiting for spring. If the winter has left one lesson in the old houses, it is that endurance is usually made from things too small for a chronicle. A person notices the draft and hangs a cloth. A person hears the animal cough and brings in more bedding. A person saves a dry twig for morning. A person gives the warmer side of the blanket to a child. None of these acts changes the history books, but together they make history inhabitable. The people we have visited would not have called this a strategy. It was simply the way a household remained a household. They trusted memory, custom, and one another. They knew that a fire is easier to keep than to relight, that a roof should be checked before the storm, that a road is safest in daylight, and that the last loaf should be divided before anyone takes the first piece. Knowledge lived in gestures. Now the monastery is quiet. The scriptorium is dark. The guest hall fire has become a warm red line beneath the ash. In the dormitory, the sleepers have found their positions again. Beyond the walls, The first thin rain of spring touches the last patches of snow. It makes a sound so delicate that the sleeping world almost does not hear it. The farmhouse is quiet too. The pot is ready for the morning. The clothes are close to the hearth. The animals breathe in the stable. A child sleeps with one hand resting on the blanket, and an older person wakes just long enough to see that the fire is still alive. Then the hand returns to the warmth, and the house continues its gentle breathing. Let the world continue without your help. The bell will ring. The road will soften. The first green leaves will unfold when they are ready. You can remain in the deepest part of sleep, held by a warmth that does not need to be measured. The monastery bell is quiet now. The snow on the roof has begun to loosen. A drop falls from the eave and disappears into the earth. In the guest hall, the last traveler turns beneath a blanket. In the kitchen, the embers are covered, but their warmth remains. The whole building rests between seasons, neither fully winter nor yet spring. That in-between place is gentle. It asks for no decision. The old winter has done what it came to do, and the new season has not yet asked for work. There is a moment when the world is simply waiting, and you may rest inside that moment. Let the fields wait. Let the road wait. Let the bell wait until its next hour. The people of the old houses have found their warmth, and you may find yours in the quiet room around you. There is a final sound beneath all these winters, the sound of people making room for one another. A bench moved closer to the hearth, a blanket placed over a shoulder, a bowl divided into two, a guest welcomed through a gate. Shelter is built from stone and timber, but it is completed by such gestures. The snow will melt, the wood will be replaced, the stores will be opened, and new stores will be made. The same care will pass into another year, quietly enough that no one sees its whole shape. The care does not need a name. It is present in the blanket, the bowl, the repaired roof, and the hand that keeps the ember alive. Let it pass gently through the final minutes of the story. The final minutes need no conclusion beyond rest. The winter has become quiet. The spring has begun somewhere beyond hearing, and the old world is breathing beneath its roofs. All that remains is a soft light, a covered fire, and the steady permission to sleep. The old houses are quiet now, and the winter night is gentle. Let the gentleness remain as the story closes. The bell will return when it is time, but not yet. For now, the night remains open and still. The night can continue. The old winter is not asking for one final thought. It is only resting in the dark, beneath the roofs and branches, while the first quiet warmth of spring gathers beyond the horizon. You can rest there too, without following the season any farther. The fire is covered. The bed is ready. The bell is quiet. The roofs hold their warmth, and the snow has become a soft roof of its own. Let the story settle into that stillness, and let sleep arrive in whatever gentle way it chooses. The room is safe, warm enough, and wonderfully still. Beyond the monastery walls, the fields are waiting for the first softened earth. Beyond the fields, the road is waiting for the first dry wheel. Beyond the road, the whole wide world is waiting for the season to change. You do not need to travel there tonight. You may remain here, in the quiet warmth between one breath and the next. The story can end softly. Thank you for spending this long winter in history with me. I'm the Yawning Historian. Good night.